Up to this point, you've been given an inequality and then you've solved that inequality. And sometimes you've even graphed the solutions to that inequality on a number line. In this lesson, we're going to actually look at word problems that involve inequalities. And so your first step is going to be to write the inequality. And so just like when we wrote equations, we usually want to look at what the total is when we're trying to set these problems up. And so we're going to do the same thing here, but now it's not going to be equal to that total, it's going to be one of these symbols with that total. And we're going to have to use keywords in the problem to know which symbol to use. And so remember, we filled this table out at the very beginning of your notes, and so you're going to want to have that table handy as you're starting to fill these problems in and write these inequalities, so you can go back and look at that. Okay, so let's look at our first example here. When you read through this, he wants to end the year with 80%, and he's trying to figure out what he needs to get on the fifth and final exam to make that happen. And so we're given the first 4 exam scores, and then we're going to write an inequality and solve it to figure out what he needs to get on that fifth and final exam. So first of all, let's look at this. What's the total that he needs to get in this problem? Okay, he wants to end with 80%, so that's what we're trying to have our inequality be. We want it to be something with 80%. Now, we need to figure out what symbol to put in here, because again, it's not going to be an equal sign. So look for your key word. It says to show the minimum score he can get. And so if you look at our chart here for a minimum, that's going to be the greater than or equal to symbol. And that makes sense. Whatever his average is, in order to make his parents happy, it needs to be bigger than 80%. It needs to be greater than or equal to 80%. Okay, now we just need to figure out the other side of this inequality. So we're going to find the average of his scores. And so normally when you find the average, you add them all up and you divide by how many there are. So how many exams are there that we're averaging together? Okay, there are 5 of them. Okay, we're trying to find the 5th one. We're given 4 scores, but we're trying to find the 5th one here. So we're going to divide whatever we have up here by 5. Okay, so now let's add all those scores together. Well, we've got these 4 scores. So we've got 71 plus 84 plus 79 plus 81. That's 4 of them. But what's the 5th one? Well, we don't know what the 5th one is. That's what we're trying to figure out. And so that's where our variable comes in. So plus x, those 4 plus x divided by 5 has to be greater than or equal to 80. So now we just need to solve that inequality. So the first thing we might do is we might combine together like terms here. So go ahead and combine together 71 plus 84 plus 79 plus 81. Okay, when you do that, you get 315. So 315 plus x divided by 5 is greater than or equal to 80. Okay, so let's solve that inequality. So what would your next step be? Okay, you would multiply by 5, and so 315 plus x is greater than or equal to 400. Now what? Okay, subtract 315, so x is greater than or equal to 85. And so in order to have an 80% average, Z needs to get greater than or equal to 85 on that 5th and final exam. Okay, so again, to solve this inequality, write this inequality, we had to start by figuring out what the total was and what symbol we were going to use, and then just fill in the other side of our inequality. Okay, let's try this on the next one. Okay, so read through this problem, figure out what our total is, and figure out what inequality sign we want to use. Okay, so he has $120 to spend, so that's going to be our total. Is it going to be greater than or less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to? Well, it needs to be less than or equal to 120 because he can't spend more than that. That's all he's got. Okay, now let's write what our equation, our inequality would look like on the other side. Okay, what's he buying? He's buying a coat and a hat. The coat is 3 times more than the average hat. So what might you write over here to show that he's going to buy a coat and a hat, and the coat is 3 times more than the hat? Okay, so you have the coat plus the hat. So the 3h represents the coat, and the h represents the hat. Okay, go ahead and solve that inequality, and what do you get for h? Okay, so combine together your like terms. You get 4h is less than or equal to 120. Divide both sides by 4, and we get h is less than or equal to 30. And so what is the most he can spend on each? Well, the most he can spend on a hat has to be less than or equal to 30, and so what he can spend on the coat has to be less than or equal to 3 times that, or 90. Alright, see if we can write an inequality for the next one. It tells us a little bit about our cell phone plan. We have a monthly fee of $28 plus 30 cents per minute. and we're going to try to keep it under $40. So how many minutes per month can we talk on our cell phone? This is an old question, by the way. Okay, so we want to keep it under $40, so it has to be less than or equal to 40. Okay, we're using $28 plus 30 cents per minute, so 28 plus 0.30 times m. Okay, we're going to solve that inequality. Let's go ahead and solve that inequality and figure out what our answer would be here. Okay, so subtract 28 and you get 0.3m is less than or equal to 12. Now we want to divide 12 by 0.3, and we get m is less than or equal to 40. So less than or equal to 40 minutes. Not very reasonable anymore. Okay, how about our next inequality? Read through that and determine what inequality sign and what your total is going to be here. Okay, so the capacity of the elevator is 2,000. We want the maximum number of boxes. So it needs to be less than or equal to 2,000. Okay, what are you going to write on the other side of the inequality? Okay, each box weighs 64 pounds. Craig weighs 160. We're trying to find the number of boxes. So it would be 160 plus 64 times b. Okay, go ahead and solve that inequality. Alright, so you should subtract 160 from both sides. 64b is less than 1,840. Divide both sides by 64. And we get that b is less than or equal to 28.75. So what's the maximum number of boxes he can carry up on the elevator with him? Okay, it would be 28, because 29 would not work in this inequality. If he's got 29 boxes, he's over the 2,000 pounds. So even though you would normally round up this 28.75, we want it to be less than or equal to 28.75. So 29 won't work, so the maximum number of boxes would be 28 boxes. And so kind of keep that in mind if you have to actually write down what the maximum number is and you can't use a decimal, that you always want to make the inequality true with whatever number you pick. Okay, one last example here. See if you can figure out what our inequality would be here. Right, we want it to be greater than or equal to 100 square feet. Okay, the area is 100 feet. We want it to be at least that, so that means it's greater than or equal to. Okay, what would you put on this side? How do you find the area of a rectangle? Okay, it's length times width, and the length is 15. What's the width? Well, we don't know, so it would be 15 times w has to be greater than or equal to 100. Okay, so we want to go ahead and solve that. So what do you get when you solve that equation? Well, you divide both sides by 15, and you get that w is greater than or equal to, let's see here, what do we get? 6 2/3. So the width has to be greater than 6 2/3 to make that happen. Okay, so now we should be able to solve these inequalities that are word problems. Again, look for whatever your total is, figure out what your inequality sign is, then try to fill in the other side of the inequality, and then solve that inequality.